It's Tuesday, July 25th. I am Matt Harmon, and big news here to start the podcast, a little programming note. We are going to 5 episodes a week starting next week, but that's not all. I know this podcast feed threw a lot of change at you just about 365 days ago. Hell, we've been throwing change at you a lot longer than that, actually, if I'm being honest. But we're going to do it for what I hope is one last time. The Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast is going away forever. And we're rebranding and relaunching it as something new-ish next week. New name, new art, new music. More details on that next week, but enjoy these final precious 2 episodes of the forecast before we hopefully blow your mind with great things. I've made no qualms about my thoughts on the name of the podcast, so I'm excited about this change. I'm excited, especially today, joining us on the penultimate episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. It's Kate Magdziuk, who's going to be doing some work with Yahoo this year. So no pressure on this, being the second to last iteration of this show. None of that, Kate. I'm excited that you're here to get you in front of the podcast audience again and let everybody know what exciting stuff you're going to be doing for Yahoo this year.
I am super excited to be joining the team. It's an honor and a privilege as always, but I did not realize that we were this close to a relaunch of the show. That really is totally no pressure on my part. You know what? That's okay. We're going to kick things off right. We're going to close this chapter correctly with a really nice show about all of the buzz in training camp, because there's a lot to wade through. So I'm super pumped for that. But yeah, we're going to be I'll be covering your weekly busts over at Yahoo Fantasy, which is going to be a really exciting column. I can't wait.
Talk about no pressure.
No pressure at all. I can't wait for all of the irate messages I'm going to get when I call your favorite players a bust. It's going to be a good season. We're going to have some fun.
Yeah, it is going to be a really exciting season. And yeah, again, talk about excitement. I'm glad that we have real hard news to talk about, Kate, now that training camps have opened. We are going to talk about the news here in a second, but we're also later on in the show going to take a full kind of relook back at what happened in minicamp, the hype that we are always kind of a little skeptical of, and we're going to decide whether we buy into that hype or not. But as you mentioned, we have some real news to talk about coming out of training camp this week, because things are actually happening. No more, look, I loved the Flip the Script series we did. That was awesome. Great stuff. But we don't have to hypothesize anymore, because things are actually happening. Starting with some big news this morning, Ian Rappaport reported that, surprise, the Giants and star running back Saquon Barkley agreed to terms on a new 1-year deal worth up to, oh man, that has been the phrase of the offseason, up to $11 million, sources say, as Barkley gives himself a chance to beat the franchise tag. He's also getting a $2 million signing bonus up front, which I do think is important here. Bottom line, Barkley is coming in. He's reporting to training camp. So basically, Kate, they rip up the franchise tag. They give Barkley, $2 million upfront money. That is nice. And then another $909,000 in incentives. I'm a little surprised that was all it took to get Barkley in the fold here.
That, as soon as I saw the tweet, I was like, what else am I missing here? Because it felt like Barkley really had his heels dug into the ground here, and I thought it was going to take something monumental in order to get him to budge, but it doesn't feel like it was all that much. I don't know if Barkley maybe took it more as a sign of good faith on behalf of the team. It felt like there was something else that had to be going on here, because it just really didn't feel like they were all that close. But you know what? Maybe some of that upfront money was what Barkley was digging his heels in the ground in the first place for. So either way, great news for the Giants. Maybe we'll see some fewer updates on Paris Campbell taking snaps out of the backfield, because that certainly wasn't, the headline I think Giants fans were hoping for this offseason. I mean, the Giants have to be thrilled.
They have to be thrilled. I wonder if there was maybe this is just a sign of good faith that the Giants actually want Barkley long term, and they can come to an agreement. I think the franchise tag, and ironically enough, the fact that he's on this deal now, Kate, allows them to franchise tag him again next year, which like he could be in this position again, like 365 days from now. I'm hoping that that's not this. And this is like a sign of good faith from the Giants that they're actually sticking to the original point of the franchise tag, which is, hey, you're our franchise player. We are just going to kick this can down the road and get a deal done with you long term, instead of what teams are doing it now is just like a way to keep these guys, from ever hitting the open market. We talk about, the running back market. None of these guys are getting to the open market. That's the thing. So I hope that that's what this is. I was surprised. I think we're both surprised this happened. One other thing here, Rap Sheet also said like Jonathan Taylor is kind of the next one to watch here. He has yet to show up to training camp in Indianapolis, according to Rap Sheet, and he was visibly frustrated with the situation on the running back Zoom call that happened recently, and it's clear he wants to be properly compensated. Again, Rap Sheet calls it a situation to monitor. I just think because it's kind of the topic du jour in fantasy right now, Kate, I'm curious, are you worried now that Barkley seems like, okay, he's good, he's back in the mix? I think we can rank him wherever we were going to rank him before. Are there any of these other guys, I guess Taylor included, that you're sort of like, keeping your ear to the ground about what's going on, or potentially like adjusting rankings on any of them for a possible holdout?
For me, it's got to be Josh Jacobs. I'm not so concerned about Jonathan Taylor at this point, right? I kind of wonder if this is maybe one of these situations where he's making it known to the team. He's being vocal, because I think that's going to be a key point of emphasis, is continuing this conversation and being loud and not allowing people to say, all right, well, Saquon's taken care of. Like, we can put this conversation in the rearview mirror. Like, I think running backs are going to need to keep this topic at the forefront of conversation. I'm not worried about Jonathan Taylor, although it would be great for my historical projected breakout of Zach Moss. But Josh Jacobs, I have to admit, I'm a little concerned that he might not be as willing as Saquon Barkley, especially like the way that things were handled last season, right? This team ran him into the ground.
Right.
And I thought that was such a clear-cut sign that this was not going to be a relationship for the long term. Based on, like, he was dealing with a hand injury, still came in, had carries du jour and carries galore. And there wasn't really all that much point to him receiving all of that extra work. Like, it just felt like a clear signal that, all right, we're planning for you to be somebody else's problem, so we're going to use you to your full potential while you're here. It's hard to project him being so willing, as Saquon Barkley has been, to be amenable to even this 1 year deal with, some extended terms and extended opportunities for money.
I completely agree with you that he's the guy to really keep an eye on, especially since he's tweeted before, like, it's not about you, it's about the guys coming after you. And you're so right to point out, there's a lot of good vibes besides this particular instance. And again, I think this could be an extension of good vibes between New York and Barkley, but he's just been a Giants guy. They've picked him second overall. Like, even if it's not that staff, there's still like ownership and everything is obviously in the mix there. With Jacobs, this relationship got off between him and Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler in this version of the Raiders got off to a frosty start from the jump when they didn't pick up the fifth year option. They played him in how this all went, why we all ended up pushing him so far stupidly down our draft boards last year, because we overrated that frosty relationship. But I feel like those good vibes are still not present between the Raiders and Josh Jacobs. So I agree with you. He is probably the one to watch there. In other running back news, very minor, but Melvin Gordon signed with the Ravens on a 1 year, up to the phrase of the offseason, up to $3.1 million. The Ravens also subsequently placed J.K. Dobbins on the PUP list. The Ravens are off to a very Ravens start to camp. We'll get to even more of that here in just a second. But any reaction from you on J.K. Dobbins on the PUP or Melvin Gordon going to the Ravens? We know this is an offense in transition right now with Baltimore.
You know what? The interesting thing, I think, just overall, I'm very concerned about J.K. Dobbins. Like, started off on the PUP last season, missed 4 games to start the year, got some playing time, had this cleanup procedure on the knee. He just hasn't been able to get away from this knee injury since the torn ACL. And it feels like we haven't made all that much progress over the last year in terms of his rehabilitation. Melvin Gordon, we know, has been extremely productive. Obviously he's got a lot of touches, to his name. He ranks 4th overall in rushing yards among active running backs, 4th overall in
Wow.
number of rushing touchdowns over his career. Like he's seen a lot of miles, but we know he's productive, and we do know that this is a rushing offense that as long as we have Lamar Jackson under center, there's going to be a lot of potential for productivity. I would not be surprised if Melvin Gordon had some nice impact here. It's not going to be sexy impact. Think like Todd Gurley with the Atlanta Falcons, where like nose for the end zone wasn't
unsexy,
particularly exciting. Like I could picture that being Melvin Gordon this year. He's probably going to have like that week 6 drop off where he falls off the face of the earth. We never hear from him again. But like if we're drafting best ball right now, or even in the later rounds of your fantasy drafts, I think Melvin Gordon's kind of intriguing. Just he's got a nose for the end zone, and we know that those are very valuable touches in fantasy.
100%. And, I think obviously he has to make the roster first, but if he makes the roster, like I'm with you that this J.K. Dobbins stuff, I was feeling pretty good about Dobbins coming into the season because he was obviously off to a rough start at the beginning of last year. He ends up going on IR for a stint, but when he came back, he was one of the most efficient rushers in the NFL from like an EPA per rush perspective. He's still a little kind of up and down for fantasy because he's not a pass catcher. And I don't care what the Ravens say. They're not throwing to their running backs more this year. They got too many good receivers. They got, a rushing quarterback. That's not going to happen. So I think he's kind of a tough guy to rank in fantasy, and this makes him even tougher. I still like Gus Edwards a lot, but he's another guy that has an injury history here. So I think the Ravens getting themselves options. I'm with you that I don't know that I'm like drafting Melvin Gordon, but if he has a stretch, like a 3 to 4 week stretch where he is an important part of this offense, I'm not going to be surprised by that. I should note, by the way, but we had so much to say in the intro there, welcoming Kate and obviously about the name change. We have Mark Andrews coming up later in the program. Mark Andrews had a good talk with us about the Ravens offense and some of the changes that are going to go on there. Also may or may not have given me a little crap about not charting tight ends for reception perception. So definitely stay tuned for that conversation for more Ravens stuff. But I'm with you that I have my eye at least on what's going to happen here with J.K. Dobbins in camp. But all right, Kate, next thing here, I'm going to group this entire bit of news together and just call it Enigmatic Wide Receiver Roundup. I'm going to run through all of them and you tell me which one or two really stand out to you as a big piece of news here. First of all, I said enigmatic. Nobody is more enigmatic than Kadarius Toney. Starting off the news here, Kadarius Toney aggravated an old knee injury in a punt return drill in Sunday's practice. He's going to miss some time in training camp and the preseason, but is expected to hopefully be ready for the start of the regular season. We literally just found out right before we started recording that he had a procedure to clean up knee cartilage. Not great. Also, Bears wide receiver Chase Claypool started camp on the physically unable to perform list. He was taken off like the next day. That's been a weird offseason for him. This is my favorite player of the group so far. People that know me know that, but you got to admit that Rashad Bateman belongs on the enigmatic wide receiver list, Kate. Training camp opens. Ravens placed him on the reserve/did not report list. Eric DeCosta said he wasn't too concerned about it. He reported 2 days later, and he immediately goes right on the PUP list. Something's going on there. The Giants also signed their 100th slot receiver in Cole Beasley. Okay. The Vikings wide receiver rookie Jordan Addison, unfortunately, I think is in this group right now because he was cited for going 140 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour speed zone early Thursday morning. Allegedly, he says it was because of a medical emergency with his dog. I'm not saying he's not telling the truth, but even as a dog guy, I love my dogs. I'd be rushing my ass to the vet, if they needed to go there for an emergency. I have done that. I still ain't going 140 miles in a 55. Let me just say that. It is still a little bit of a lapse of judgment there. Again, no judgment, but still. Jamison Williams, last one here, is going to miss some time with practice time with a leg injury. Kate, that's a lot of enigmatic wide receiver news. Do one or two of these really stand out to you as something that might move the needle for fantasy?
It's got to be Kadarius Toney, right? Like Kadarius Toney, fantasy analysts and fantasy fans, like Kansas City fans, as soon as he was traded from the Giants, they thought that Kadarius Toney, former first-round wide receiver, he's got to be the answer, especially given the amount of opportunity that exists in this Kansas City Chiefs offense. You've got Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league. Like, you've got an aging Travis Kelce. Somebody has to emerge that's going to make a dent in this passing game. And I think everybody has hoped that it will be Kadarius Toney just based on his talent. Like his athleticism is freaking off the charts. But like I've been saying all offseason that I've had some concerns with Kadarius Toney. And not to say that everybody hasn't. Obviously, there's been lots of injuries, but I've been concerned about the team's overall usage. Like was banged up, was on the injury report in the postseason. Matt, he played 6 total offensive snaps in the Super Bowl. He did not enter the Super Bowl off. He was off the injury report prior to that Super Bowl. 6 total offensive snaps. I'm just saying, and he played 2 snaps on special teams. I don't think you're going to play your quote unquote number 1 wide receiver on special teams if you're all that concerned about, some sort of nagging injury, etc., that would keep him off the field for offensive snaps. I just haven't bought that the Kansas City Chiefs are actually giving us really it's like, show me, don't tell me.
Yeah.
And what they're showing me has not been that they look at Kadarius Toney as the wide receiver 1. This just further exacerbates that situation by keeping him off the field during times where reps could be key. The other headline popping out to me here is, of course, Rashad Bateman. Like, talent is off the charts. I really want to see him fully healthy, but was out of, mandatory camps in the spring after getting an injection in his foot, had the Liz Frank injury. Everybody kind of made it seem like, oh, well, this was just kind of like a follow-up injection, more preventative. It was very hush-hush. People weren't acting overly alarmed within the organization, but it still feels like there's something there. We're at the end of July and he's still not ready to go. And I think that we should be concerned. Like, I mean, the deal with OBJ, they paid OBJ a lot of money. And I don't think they're going to pay OBJ a lot of money if they're not planning for him to be a big part of this offense. I just feel like there's something there that is going to keep Rashad Bateman off more of my fantasy teams than I'd like, just because I don't have good vibes.
Yeah. No, vibes are not good. And just missing time. This is a new offense. Like he's got to get the terminology down, the timing down. I think they've got to find the right role for him, Kate, because I think like these receivers and all there's been good buzz about Zay Flowers and like what he's been doing in camp. Like I think Zay Flowers could be the number 1 receiver on this team. I think Zay Flowers could play X. He could play Z. He could play slot. I think Beckham could play X. He could play Z. He could play slot. I think Bateman could play X, Z, slot. Like they've got to find out what the role for Bateman is, and him missing time, not figuring this offense out, both in minicamp and then now in training camp. It's not great. I'm ready to be positive on Bateman the second things happen, but I'm with you that right now I think you've got to adjust a little bit and maybe move him. I would have in my rankings, I'm pretty sure I've got him way higher than consensus and like the highest of these 3. I'm probably going to dial that back down a little bit until we get some more positive buzz. And you and I could not be on this more on the same page with the Kadarius Toney thing. Like people familiar with reception perception know like this guy, there has been zero evidence of this guy ever being like a good enough route runner and a separator to be a number 1 receiver. I mean, if he was going to be the Chiefs wide receiver 1 this year, he would have had to be doing things we've have never seen him do at Florida with the Giants and especially last year with the Chiefs, Kate. And look, this is a old man, unpopular, old man yells at the clouds thing to say, but I'm just going to say it. Like the fact that this guy can't stay healthy, the fact that he's spending his offseason, fighting with Giants fans and in their DMs and saying he's been hacked, and the fact that he's not a good route runner and not a good technician, those 3 things all go together to me. And I'm just going to say that. Like that's the reality of where we're at with this player right now. And I hope he can get healthy because he's super exciting and fun to watch, but I'm with you that I never bought into the wide receiver 1 enthusiasm for him. He could be an upgrade on McCole Hardman to what he was doing last year, 100%, but that's still not a wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Gadget has its place. And I think Kadarius Toney, like he can offer any offense a lot of versatility, but can he be the every down guy? No. And the Chiefs have shown us time and time again, since he was traded there last year, like throughout this offseason, they keep saying he can be the number 1, but they're not making him the number 1. And I think it's very clear why. But both of these wide receivers, Matt, okay.
last but not least, Jordan Addison, my guy. Slow it down. By the way, if I were ever driving 140 miles per hour, I would be like, I would be vomiting. Like, I don't think I could handle that because that would be so terrifying to me.
Now he's in a Lamborghini, Kate. I don't know if you got a Lambo. I don't.
I do not.
Yeah, I'm with you that I try to be a pretty careful driver. My wife definitely thinks I'm too careful of a driver. But
I drive a Toyota Prius. I'm not really in the same acceleration boat as these Lamborghinis, but my guy, I just want to see him exercising better judgment overall. In Jordan Addison, we know the talent's there, so let's clean it up and not drive 140 miles an hour.
It is ironic that Andy literally said on the last podcast that if Jordan Addison doesn't have like the best rookie wide receiver season, the only one to blame is himself. And I think this news broke like 2 hours after that. So again, the medical emergency with the dog, if that's really what this is, I get why you're in a rush. 2xing the speed limit, probably too much of a rush. I think we can all agree on that. So hopefully,
we're close to 3xing. We're close to 3xing.
Let's not.
I'm stressed. I'm stressed thinking about the drive. Imagine 100%. The dog in the passenger seat, though.
Yeah. That must have been tough. That must have not been great. Last bit of news here before we get into our mini camp, Mirage, or training camp tea leaf section. Jimmy Graham signs a 1-year deal with the Saints. This just happened a couple hours ago. Kate, I don't know about you when you saw it, but for me, when I saw it, I had to reread the tweet at least 3 times. This does say 1-year deal, not one day deal. Right. Because I thought it was one of those, he's retiring with the Saints. He hasn't played since 2021 with the Chicago Bears when he started 6 games. He caught 14 passes in 15 overall games played. So it was very shocked when this happened. The Saints tight end room is sneaky crowded, right? Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, and now Jimmy Graham. Kate, I don't know if you want to give a fantasy take on Jimmy Graham this year, if you think there's anything there. I would just say that I love Jimmy Graham, the player, right?
He played basketball. Did you know that?
I did know he played basketball, Kate. And you know what?
Yeah.
I was going to say when he came into the league in 2011, I don't know where you were in your fantasy football journey then. I remember being in college and playing, when you're a college aged guy, all you want to do is just, I mean, we were just total toxic masculinity, the picture of it in my friend group. But all we wanted to do was just totally rip on each other and make sure everyone knew we were the smartest. And being able to draft Jimmy Graham in your 2011 fantasy league when he caught 99 passes and 11 touchdowns out of nowhere, taking him in the late rounds before really fantasy football analysis had exploded like it is now. There was no better feeling than being people who Jimmy Graham? Who's that guy? I'm no, yeah, he played basketball, and you're gonna freaking see. You're gonna see. So
you're gonna love this guy.
I don't know what Jimmy Graham's gonna do this year. I don't know if you know what Jimmy Graham's gonna do this year, Kate, but it was kind of cool to see him pop back up with the Saints.
It probably won't match his 2011 performance. That's my broad. That's my bold prediction here. Let's see. What did Mercedes Lewis do in his year 36 season? He caught. Let's see. Looks like 10 passes, 107 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 3 touchdowns. That's not too shabby. If we can just copy and paste that stat line over for Jimmy Graham, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, that would. I'd even still be pretty surprised by that, just because this guy didn't even play last year. That's nuts. But well wishes to Jimmy Graham and the Saints. I find the Saints offense immensely fascinating this year. I don't think we're going to talk about them here in the next section, but I'm very fascinated to watch this offense. All right, that's enough of training camp news. What we're going to do here now in this section of the show, we're going to look back at minicamp hype reports. Oh, the precious minicamp hype reports that we did not talk about. Thankfully, we did not have to sit here every week dissecting minicamp reports because we were doing our Flip the Script series on this podcast. But we are going to look back at a few of them and determine if those headlines this summer were minicamp mirages or the early tea leaves for what we can expect to carry over into training camp and the regular season. Kate, I'm big on the drumbeat theory that, kind of like Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammey popularized in the Football Guys days, the guys I listen to, kind of coming up in the business. So what do you think? You think this makes any sense?
I think so. I think so. Where should we start?
Let's, I didn't mention this, as the podcast is going through a lot of changes here. Lord Podcast, our great friend John Gennaro is back temp producing for us here over the week while our regular producer Colin is out. He was kind enough to group these into groupings for us here, and I think we should start off with the first one here. The only report in the Rousing Rabble group here for our minicamp hype reports or minicamp reports period. There is something up with Stefon Diggs and the Bills / Josh Allen. I don't know what it is. I think most of us don't know what it is. I'm not even sure if the Bills really know what it is, but the Boston Globe's Ben Volen reports that Stefon Diggs' frustration with the Bills is, quote, it's with his role in the offense and his voice in play calling. Kate, is the Bills Stefon Diggs tension, is it over? Is it a mere minicamp mirage, or is this a training camp tea leaf?
I think it's a training camp tea leaf because I just don't buy the idea. Like, I think it's going to be fine, but I do think there was something maybe there that wasn't necessarily his frustration with his role in the offense. Like, dude had just under a 28% target share last year. Like, he's getting targets. He's getting fed. Saw almost 33% of the team's targeted air yards. Like, he had a role with the Bills. It's not like he's just out there doing cardio, running routes up and down the field. No, Stefon Diggs was heavily involved last year and the year before and the year before. So that idea that, the beef there was with his role, I'm just trying to figure out what is it about that role that he could have been so frustrated with because he was so involved. He was the center of that offense outside of Josh Allen. So it feels like there's something else that we're not hearing about. And maybe it's like a personal beef. Maybe he's got, you squash beef with your friends all the time and you come back fine. Maybe there was something there, but I do think I'm not buying the excuse that it's with his role. And I think that I don't know, that it's weird. It was weird.
I guess if it's a role thing, it would be like not looking back at his role last year. Although sometimes I think you could, like when you're just kind of sitting down and watching the Bills, it's like when teams double covered Steph Diggs, like, all right, we're going to go to other guys, and he gets double covered, almost more than any other receiver in the NFL. So it's like, we're going to kind of go to those other guys, and then, we're in the fourth quarter of the Bengals game. Now we're going to try to feed this guy targets in inefficient ways. And I guess maybe that, if we're looking back, I would say, like, looking forward, they draft Dalton Kincaid. They were really, I think they were really heavily courting DeAndre Hopkins. And I wonder if that part of it was like, what do you need another receiver for? Like, the answer can just be more Stefon Diggs if I'm trying to get into Diggs' head on this one. But I think there was tension with maybe not Josh Allen and Steph Diggs, but with the Bills and Stefon Diggs. And I like, it could easily be nothing, but if the Bills start, 2-4 for whatever reason, I don't think that's going to happen. And, Diggs is getting 8 targets a game or something like that. Maybe more of this tension pops up. I tend to think it's nothing, but I'm with you that it's not nothing, if that makes any sense.
Yes, that I feel like that's probably the better way to say it, is that it's not nothing. It's something to continue monitoring and seeing, do these conversations continue? And like, interesting point about DeAndre Hopkins too, like the fact that he's now officially off the market, like, does that, ease some of those uneasy feelings for Stefon Diggs? Maybe, but I don't think it's not nothing. I do think it's
totally,
not.
Yeah.
That's a lot of double negatives, but not. I don't not think it's not nothing.
We don't think it's nothing.
Yes.
There it is.
Mind blown.
I
need a diagram. I need a diagram and we'll be good. But yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you got it. You people, you got it. Next one we can file under injury optimism. Javonte Williams will be 100% ready to rock in week 1. Williams, who's coming back from a complicated ACL injury, said, quote, the plan is for him to be cleared for training camp. Current news, he has not been placed on the PUP, so that's kind of following up that mini camp hype there. Reminder, you usually want these guys the year after they come back. The sort of thing we just talked about with J.K. Dobbins there, after he got that knee injury, sort of kind of cleared up there. So, Kate, Javonte Williams, week 1 roll. Are you just buying like he's walking in totally fine, or are you a little more? You clearly, for the YouTube folks can see, you are a little more skeptical than that.
I am skeptical, and it generally that skepticism kind of comes from looking at the Broncos and what they've sort of been tied. I feel like they've been tied to a lot of running backs. They haven't made any moves outside of Samaje Perine, but it feels like they've never really been out of the conversation for any running backs. Even in the draft, like it felt like there was a possibility that they could be drafting another running back. It just has felt like they're never fully out. And I'm going to take that as an indication that the team feels strongly enough that they might need an insurance policy. And I would not be at all surprised to see one of these bigger name veterans, especially as we proceed through training camp and they get a feel for Javonte Williams. If one of these vets like a Zeke or maybe a Leonard Fournette actually end up in Denver as this insurance policy. Same thing for the Jets too. Interestingly enough, we've heard good things about Breece Hall, but they've never really been out on any of these big name running backs, which doesn't feel like a huge vote of confidence for me. I'm gonna probably be out on Javonte Williams. I love the talent. Like I love his ability to create yards after contact, and what he can do in terms of his elusiveness is incredible. But that's what makes him special. And I'm not going to bank that, even if he is out there playing, he's going to be out there at 100%, let alone like mentally 100%. Can you overcome that mental hurdle of trusting your knee? Because for a guy with, kind of a violent running style like Javonte Williams, you're going to need to trust that knee. And I think even if he's out there, I'm out.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here with this one. And by the way, not a coincidence that both the Broncos and the Jets have been connected to Dalvin Cook. More so the Jets, I think, have been a little more heavily. But yeah, like these are two teams that have, like, I think we need to sort of see, like, we need to see in this I think is a training camp tea leaf. It's not the optimism is the mini camp mirage. I think the training camp tea leaf is we're going to have to follow this one, that if we get into 2 weeks of camp and they're like, Williams, maybe not so great, they might get to a point where they're, they're a little skeptical, and maybe they bring in a Dalvin Cook. And I think the same goes for Breece Hall with the New York Jets as well. It's good that you tied those two situations together. I sort of kind of remember like Saquon Barkley from the 2021 season. It didn't go the way we wanted to because he ended up getting another injury around week 6. But, Barkley started out playing 29 snaps in week 1, and there was like a full-on panic about it, like, oh no, not going well. And then 84% of the snaps, 86% of the snaps, 89% of the snaps, scored touchdowns in back-to-back games in weeks 3 and 4. Then he got his ankle stepped on in that Dallas game, right when he was sort of kind of ramping back up. That was not great. And so I think that could be the way it goes with Javonte and for Breece Hall. So I'm with you. Not really drafting either of those guys, but when we get into the season, my like trade radar might be kind of going on for those two players. Let's move into the hype train section here, and we can be a little more rapid fire with these, like whether it's a mini camp mirage or it's a training camp tea leaf. Starting off with this headline. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, says he wants to be used more as a downfield pass catcher this season. I love this guy. I'm never going to doubt this guy, because he's made tremendous strides from year 1 to year 2. He's a reception perception favorite. I was just watching a video of him, interview after practice where he's just talking about how fueled he is by like things people say about him. So Kate, you can be one of those people that maybe adds a little fuel to him here. Do you buy into the idea that he's going to be more of a downfield pass catcher this season than we've seen through his first 2 seasons?
I buy into the idea that he wants to be a downfield threat this season. Will it actually happen? I'm not sure. Last year, just 6.5% of his targets came on pass attempts of 20 or more air yards. That is extremely, extremely low for a team's wide receiver 1. Extremely low. Mm-hmm. And even if let's say that like doubles and he gets, maybe like 20 targets downfield, that's great. But is it enough to really like change how we're going to be drafting him or anything like that. I don't think it's going to change much. Maybe, increase that ceiling a little bit more. But in terms of fantasy upside, he's already got enough volume. Like, I don't think we're going to draft him any higher for it. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of room to grow. And I understand his gripe there. 6.5% of his targets downfield. Come on, feed the man. And Jameson Williams, hey, the injury there could be paving, some of that opportunity to get some more of that work downfield. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I think we could get him, a little higher than that percentage. But if he's going to hit his ceiling this year, to me, I think minicamp Mirage on the downfield passing part of it, to me, it's like he needs to score 10 to 12 touchdowns, which I think he could score 10 to 12 touchdowns this year with his role in the offense and just kind of having some better luck at the goal line in terms of being tackled so close to the goal line there. And, Jamal Williams, 45 carries or something inside the 10-yard line. Like, that ain't going to happen again for David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs and any of these boys there. So I like Amon-Ra St. Brown a lot. I tend to think we probably aren't going to see him be used much more, maybe slightly more, as a downfield receiver. Next one up here, and I'm going to recuse myself from this one, Kate. So this one's going to be all you. Nico Collins breakout season. It's happening this year. ESPN's DJ BNME reports that third-year pro Nico Collins has been number 2 overall pick, CJ Stroud's favorite target so far in off-season practices. I don't think Nico Collins is a superstar or anything, but I think he's shown a lot better signs through the first 2 years of his career than most people want to admit. People know my feelings on Nico Collins, so Kate, I'm going to recuse myself from saying whether it's a mini camp Mirage or a training camp tea leaf, and I want you to tell me what the truth is here.
I'm kind of buying into it. And if nothing else, like, just look at his size. He's 6'4", 216 pounds. If I'm a rookie wide receiver, I'm going to want to throw to the big boy too. Because outside of that, you've got like 31-year-old Robert Woods. Okay. Tank Dell, 5'8", 165. John Mechie, like on the smaller side and basically entering his rookie season by technicality there. Like, Nico Collins, led the team with 13 yards per reception last year, led the team with 1.68 yards per route run, not overly efficient, but was the best that there was that the Texans had to offer. I don't know how much this is actually going to translate to immediate fantasy production, but there's something to be said for being a big boy on a team of smaller sized wide receivers. And, I'm not going to be heavily drafting really anybody in this offense outside of Dameon Pierce, but Nico Collins could be a really intriguing late round prospect, especially when we consider the AFC South. Like, it's not like we're looking at the league's most terrifying defenses. Like,
True.
I think they're going to have plenty of opportunity there. I think we're probably underrating CJ Stroud a little bit. So I'll buy into Nico. But I'm not ready to let go of my guy Tank Dell, despite his very small stature. One of the most productive wide receivers in college football. I think just based on his ability to generate separation in short yardage situations, like Tank Dell, I don't want to like be totally crazy here, could lead that team in receiving touchdowns, and I wouldn't be surprised right off the bat as a rookie.
Wow. But, yeah. I love that. I love that call.
It's spicy, but my prediction, I have Nico Collins leading this team, in catches, in receiving yards, but I do think it's going to be Tank Dell that scores the touchdowns this year. But you know what? Either way, you're probably going to get a value with one of these guys because every single Texan has their ADP just kind of suppressed, I think, based on the virtue of them being with the Texans. But that could be a lot of value here that we're missing out on.
It makes sense. And I think the size that you brought up, it's one of the reasons I like Nico, is that he's really the only guy that can play X receiver on this roster. And I think that stands out a lot from the rest of the players here at the Houston Texans. But again, I'm recused myself. So it does sound like a training camp tea leave based on what Kate is saying. Next one up, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this player. Treylon Burks, breakout season 2023. Obviously, we know they signed DeAndre Hopkins, but there's still a lot of room in that offense for someone else to step up. When you look at the rest of that receiver core, ESPN's Teron Davenport reports that Treylon Burks is, quote, playing at a different speed in offseason workouts and practices. Where are you at with Treylon Burks, the guy who, again, they just signed DeAndre Hopkins. They're going to run the ball a ton. There's Chig Okonkwo there as well. Burks, is he a value now that he is starting to fall in drafts with Hopkins being there, or is this kind of a guy you're staying away from?
I'm actually all in on Treylon Burks now that we have another body in the building, especially when that body happens to be DeAndre Hopkins. Treylon Burks, absolutely love his ability after the catch, like his size speed combination for what you're going to get out of a man as ginormous as Treylon Burks. Like that's hard to come by. And I think that, what he's been really good at and what he was really good at Arkansas was generating yards after the catch. I do think that having some bodies in the field that are as talented as DeAndre Hopkins, like that's gonna deter some coverage there. I think that's going to create a pathway for Treylon Burks to actually do what he does well, which is have some of those yards after the catch. You're going to have, a hopefully healthier Ryan Tannehill, who, when he was throwing to an efficient wide receiver like A.J. Brown, was actually pretty overall efficient when you paired it with Derrick Henry in the run game. Like, I think that this is kind of creating all of the, the perfect storm for Treylon Burks to actually do what he does best. I'd love to see him work out of the slot again. Played most of his snaps last year outside, but I think, despite his size, I do think he belongs in the slot, and DeAndre Hopkins getting into the mix as that outside receiver could be exactly what Burks needs for a breakout.
I'm with you that I think Burks should be like a big slot receiver. The Burks bros hated this, but I compared him to like Juju Smith-Schuster when he was at Arkansas. That was sort of the best player comparison to me, I think, because he has that same size, after catch ability, and they both can play a little bit of bully ball. But they didn't use him anything like Juju last year. They had him as that pure X receiver that never moves around pre-snap. And I think it's just, to me, whether this is a mini camp mirage or a training camp tea leaf, comes down to, do they view Hopkins at this point in his career as still an X receiver, or do they want him to be the guy that moves around because, the speed is declining, he's declining a little bit as a player? So, and are they just going to stick with Burks at X? Because Burks is at X in this offense, I'm very skeptical that he can be that player. But if he's a slot guy moving around pre-snap, and you've got Hopkins out there dictating coverages on the outside, and we're working off play action, that sounds pretty tempting to me. So I think the tea leaf that I'm looking for here, Kate, is just what you said, which is this going to be a guy that's lining up in different spots in training camp, or are we only getting him in one position?
I mean, he is an absolute freak after the catch. Like, he reminds me, the way that he moves with the ball in his hands, he literally reminds me of a running back. And it's not just because of his size, but just the way he plays. But the team didn't really put him in a lot of situations. First of all, when it comes to having ability to generate yards after the catch, it's really hard to do that when you're pretty much the primary focus of defensive coverage. Not a lot of room to work there once you have the ball in your hands. But DeAndre Hopkins, when he was playing with Kyler Murray last year, super productive, almost 90 receiving yards per game, did not look like a washed version of DeAndre Hopkins. I think coming in, he really just kind of can shift this entire offense. But I do think the coaching staff is going to need to, take a step back and remind themselves that, yes, Treylon Burks is a big boy, but that doesn't mean we have to put him outside. And I think that that's going to be the trick, is can they get over the size and just do what is best for him as a receiver, which I think is playing out of the slot.
Totally agree. We're 100% on the same page about where this guy should line up. I hope we're 100% on the same page with this next one. Another one I'm going to have to recuse myself from, Kate, because people who listen to this podcast know how I feel about Elijah Moore. And if you don't know how I feel about this guy, because you're just popping on the podcast right now, hey, shout out to you. Welcome. It's going to be a great show. You're going to enjoy it. You'll probably hear me talk about Elijah Moore in a couple of weeks. There's no doubt about it. But The Athletics' Zach Jackson writes, Elijah Moore is, quote, an easy pick as an early breakout candidate based on the Browns' spring work. There has been a lot of pop about Moore from the minicamp periods. Is this going to be something that's just a minicamp mirage, an OTA, it obliviates afterwards? Or is that was so stupid? Or is it a training camp tea leaf? Kate, please start talking so that I can shut up.
This is the training camp tea leaf. Elijah Moore, come on down, baby. I am so hyped for the Elijah Moore breakout. I know he's apparently like tiny guys are my theme. I'm usually not a tiny wide receiver fan, but this is a new era in my life, I guess. 5'9", 178 pounds. Who cares, right? 90th percentile and 40-yard dash, 3-cone and shuttle run. Like this dude, I want to just forget what he did with the Jets. The Jets never happened. I want to go back to his prospect, his draft profile as a prospect. He was a yards after the catch machine. He's got speed. He forced missed tackles after the catch. Like he was fantastic, was able to play out of the slot, ranked 4th in slot yards in his final season at Ole Miss, still somehow ranked 9th in deep catches, 7th in deep yards on targets of 20 plus yards. Like he did all of the things that you wanted him to do. And I don't think that skill set has diminished whatsoever. Looking just in games with and without Zach Wilson, like average 12 PPR points a game without Zach Wilson. And it's not even like outside of that, he's been playing with great quarterbacks. It's just been quarterbacks that have been a little bit better than Zach Wilson. And Deshaun Watson, like plenty of questions about what he's actually going to be able to do with a full offseason program. Hopefully with an offseason that's had fewer distractions than he had last year. But I can't see a world where Elijah Moore doesn't showcase some of the skills that we saw, because I just thought he was too talented coming out of the draft.
Frankly, you don't even have to go all the way back to the prospect profile. They can go back to the rookie year. Honestly, like we saw him be really good. You mentioned with guys, normal NFL quarterbacks. Zach Wilson, not a normal NFL quarterback through 2 years.
Normal NFL quarterbacks.
Just normal NFL quarterbacks. He was a productive player. He showed he could win out at X receiver. I don't think that's going to be his position with the Browns, but he showed it as a rookie. But again, training camp tea leave. Kate said it. I'm recusing myself. No more Elijah Moore talk. You'll get plenty of it going forward, but I'm glad we're on the same page there. Let's stick with receivers with the last name Moore. Sky Moore, ready to have a breakout season. Chiefs coach Andy Reid said wide receiver Sky Moore is, quote, taking a good jump. He could be a guy who benefits from Kadarius Toney's absence, although I think he was going to play a different position than Toney anyways. He's going to be, I think, Juju's replacement as a slot receiver. Kate, I think the whole face planter theory for rookies can be informative, but can be a load of crap too. When there's a good reason why the guy didn't produce as a rookie. I think there's a good reason why Sky Moore didn't produce as a rookie. Do you buy into him taking a jump in year 2?
I think he can make a jump, but I'm not sure that I buy into it making a huge dent for fantasy. And that seems to be the differentiator here. I think everybody's in agreement that Travis Kelce, of course, is this team's quote unquote wide receiver 1. He is going to be the focal point of that passing offense. But I think what we saw in the absence of Tyreek Hill is that, there's just a sheer willingness from Mahomes to read the field and make plays to a wide variety of wide receivers. He very much showed a willingness to spread the ball around and not make anybody a focal point, which I think, at that point kind of helped, because you didn't really know who to cover. Was it Justin Watson? Was it Kadarius Toney on the few routes he ran? It didn't really matter. Even Noah Gray, he was willing to throw to the right read and not necessarily lock in on a true wide receiver 1. And so that's my biggest hesitancy with Sky Moore. I liked him as a prospect, but what does that role mean for the Kansas City Chiefs? I'm not sure at this point.
I think I agree with you, honestly, about that, because I think Sky Moore, I'm probably going to rank him ahead of consensus, and he's probably going to be the one receiver that I'm interested in proactively drafting to seal Scott Pianowski's term. But I still think the ceiling is 120 targets, and the ceiling is 120 targets, and we're probably looking at a guy who's not a quote league winner in fantasy or something like that, but a good player that I think is probably going to be the best receiver bet on this roster. But yeah, I'm with you that I think Mahomes, we know, is going to spread that thing around and just try to find the right matchup. So breakout season, I guess, is it depends on, there are some real hardos for like, what is a breakout season? And there's a real parameter on that. I think you could have a breakout season, but if you're expecting that to be a top 20 breakout season, that might be a minicamp mirage, just because this thing's going to go down with Travis Kelce. Hey, next one. I think I know how you're going to feel about this based on what you said with the Saquon Barkley section. This is the year for Paris Campbell, Kate. The Athletics' Dan Duggan said it looks like, you're rolling your eyes already. It looks like wide receiver Paris Campbell will, quote, be a featured piece of this offense. Kate, he was taking snaps in the backfield. He was all over the place. Minicamp mirage, training camp tea leave.
Oh my God, this is a mini camp mirage. Stop it. I don't know how many more slot receivers this team can bring in. Like they're just building a whole tirade of weapons here, and none of them are ones that I'm going to trust to actually make any sort of meaningful step forward. Maybe outside of Darren Waller. I don't care that he's taking snaps out of the backfield. I think that was a large, indictment on where this team was at with Saquon Barkley. If he can earn that starting slot role, great. Richie James is out. But like just last year, he's finally played a full season, was targeted, like he just wasn't efficient. Like 14% of routes he was targeted on, career low 0.98 yards per route run, when he actually sort of was getting that role and playing. Meh.
Yeah. It's, I think, minicamp mirage for sure on this one. This one's interesting because I think everybody has had their moment with Antonio Gibson in fantasy. Ron Rivera's back at it. Commanders head coach Ron Rivera said that Antonio Gibson could be a, quote, matchup nightmare for the opponent in the team's new offense. Are you drafting Antonio Gibson or are you not?
I am. So I've always been out on Antonio Gibson because I thought we got a little too carried away here. But what I'm very encouraged about, like you'll remember, Antonio Gibson is a converted wide receiver, which is why I thought it was so odd when he entered the league and they weren't really utilizing him very heavily as a wide receiver or even just taking receiving snaps out of the backfield. But year over year, we've seen his usage as a receiver increase. He's coming off a career high 58 targets, ranked fourth in PFF receiving grade, fourth highest among all running backs with 10 or more targets. JD McKissick, no longer here. He's been the team's primary receiving back over the last 3 years. I just don't think that his ADP, which right now is like the 8th round, carries a whole lot of risk. And, I don't necessarily think the competition's all that stiff between him and Brian Robinson Jr. in terms of the rushing upside. So yeah, give me the guy who is the converted wide receiver, who is finally starting to get back to what made him such a talented prospect from the get-go. I'm buying into Gibson. Finally, now that everybody else is off the train, I'll hop on board.
I like Brian Robinson, but I think this can still be a training camp tea leaf. And I'm kind of taking shots on both these guys because, like you said, neither one of them goes high enough for me to be like all out. So if I'm kind of looking for a discount RB2, I don't mind taking my shots with these two guys. This next one, it's sort of kind of on a theme of what I said about Jerry Jeudy on the last podcast. Like, the ADP seems to suggest there's nobody else here in Denver besides Jerry Jeudy. I'm not a big fan of any of these other players, but they do still exist in the NFL. Couple hype pieces on these receivers. The Broncos head coach, Sean Payton. It was definitely Sean Payton, not the Broncos. But the Broncos had Cortland Sutton study Michael Thomas's 2019 film this offseason. That's one headline. NFL Network's James Palmer said multiple people in the Broncos building believe Tim Patrick is, quote, the best football player in the team's wide receiver room. Heard that one before. I don't know that either of these things are going to come to fruition here, Kate. Listen, everybody, like every Broncos beat reporter and people in the building allegedly think Tim Patrick is the best football player on the planet. I'm skeptical of that, but I think he is going to play and he's a useful NFL player. Cortland Sutton, he ain't going to have Michael Thomas's 2019 season, but he can run a slant route. It's about the only route he can run really, really, really well. So that is at least interesting. I'm skeptical of Jerry Jeudy being like the 39th overall player off the board on best ball drafts. That makes me a little nervous. So are we buying into minicamp Mirage or training camp Tea Leaf with these other two players on the roster? Anything with the Broncos here?
So you know what is interesting? I am actually like the one person that we're not hearing like all the hype about, Marvin Mims, who is one of my favorite rookie wide receivers in this class, was generally just slept on like the entire pre-draft process. 4.38 speed, had 20.1 yards per yards per reception, 91st percentile burst score, like 96th percentile in breakout age. Like this guy has the speed, he's got the collegiate production, he's got draft capital. I'm calling minicamp Mirage for all these other hyped wide receivers, but my tea leaf lies with rookie wide receiver Marvin Mims.
Well, Kate, Andy basically said the exact same thing on the last podcast, that he's really into Mims. So you're in good company there. And look, as great as Andy is, you're in better company. No disrespect to Andy, but Sean Payton might know more about offensive football than Andy Behrens. I say might.
Maybe.
Listen, I bet Andy Behrens could beat Sean Payton in a race. No disrespect to Sean Payton's athleticism, but I know Andy Behrens, rain, snow, shine, 10 beers the night before, and he's getting up running like 5 damn miles every day. So Andy could beat Sean Payton in a race, but Sean Payton probably knows more about offensive football, and Sean Payton traded up to draft Marvin Mims despite having all these other guys on the roster. So I think you're in the same boat with Andy, and you're more importantly in the same boat with Sean Payton on that one. All right, rapid fire on these last few we clean up here before we throw to Mark Andrews. This next group is outright lies, Kate. And first one, producer John, Lord Podcast, is calling it outright lies. I'm not saying it's an outright lie, although I'm skeptical that there's going to be no drop-off in the Green Bay passing offense because second-year Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs said Jordan Love can, quote, do the same exact thing as Aaron Rodgers, a 4-time MVP who's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. Minicamp Mirage, training camp Tea Leaf.
That is a minicamp Mirage. Yeah, bold take. Minicamp Mirage. Come on, man. Like Jordan Love, sure had some production. Yeah, 14 completions, 21 pass attempts last year, 195 passing yards and a touchdown. Woohoo! Yeah, this offense is going to be different, and that's I come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Jordan Love can still be good, and this still can be a mini camp Mirage because there's going to be some changes, and he's not going to do the exact same thing as Aaron Rodgers. Next one here, and this is so disrespectful of Lord Podcast, who is back on the show and putting this in the outright lies section immediately, although he literally wrote on the outline, don't fall for it, Matt, because Lord Podcast was producing the show all through last summer when we were berated every moment with Allen Robinson hype pieces from the LA Rams. It might have set back like training camp hype for the next 50 years, the Allen Robinson situation. And I admit to being part of the problem there. But Allen Robinson is going to have a big role in the Steelers offense, according to the Athletic's Mark Kaboli, who writes that he impressed in every facet at OTAs, quote, especially in the slot at the goal line. The move to the slot appears to be natural for Allen Robinson. I like Allen Robinson as a big slot receiver, much more than the Rams X receiver, Kate, but minicamp Mirage, training camp Tea Leaf.
Minicamp Mirage for me. I'm like kind of just out on this Pittsburgh Steelers offense in general for fantasy because I'm not sure what this is actually going to translate to. Like the Pittsburgh Steelers converted just under 52% of their red zone drives into touchdowns, ranked 23rd in the league. And I think that, looking at what we saw executed under Matt Canada, like we've already heard that this playbook will not be opened up for Kenny Pickett in year 2, which is crazy. Like kid showed some baller moments, but still he threw, a lot of these big time plays came in times of sheer need and desperation later in the game when they needed one of these game winning drives. Like I think in between those plays, how much of how much is going to be really, played out, in Kenny Pickett's hands in these outside of those clutch moments. I don't know. I'm not necessarily buying it. Kenny Pickett threw 7 passing touchdowns last year, 9 interceptions. I think he takes a nice jump forward in his own development, but I think any development we see out of him is going to be in spite of Matt Canada. And I just don't trust what Matt Canada is executing in order to set both Kenny Pickett and these wide receivers up for success.
I hope that the Matt Canada not opening things up is a mini camp mirage, but I have my skepticism about Matt Canada. We'll stick on the Steelers here real quick before we just rapid fire the last three. Jaylen Warren will significantly eat into Najee Harris's work. This goes into the betting on youth category. Again, Mark Caboli, our guy, says there's, quote, no way offensive coordinator Matt Canada can keep Jaylen Warren off the field as much as he did last season. Again, this quote implies that Canada knows what he's doing. But do you buy into Jaylen Warren being someone that can significantly, and I think significantly doing a lot of heavy lifting here, eat into Najee Harris's work? And you're a fan of the Steelers. Like you know what you're talking about with the Steelers. So I'm curious what you think about Warren.
I am a fan of the Steelers, and just looking back over the last two seasons, Najee Harris has had over 50% of the team's rush attempts in each of the last two seasons. He's been ineffective and hasn't yet exceeded 4 yards per rush attempt, which, kind of disappointing when you look at Jaylen and what, Warren produced right out of the gate. Like it was disappointing when you look at the first round draft capital, but this year, last year, Najee Harris suffered a Liz Frank injury in camp, played through it, played with a steel plate in his shoe to help stabilize. And once we saw the Steelers come back from the bye, I actually saw a little jump in his efficiency. They still made some moves on the offensive line. And I think, it's a lot easier to see efficiency from these running backs when we are seeing them not on an every single down basis. A lot of times we'll see, some efficiency when they're asked to step in for, these sort of relief duties. But, so I'm always probably going to project some lower efficiency for Najee Harris. But we do this every year. We project that Mike Tomlin is suddenly going to have an RB2 and he's going to establish a committee, and he never does it. Now, is that to say that I don't think Najee Harris could benefit from a 1-2 punch, sort of dynamic there in that backfield? I think giving him 70% of the team's carries, probably not the best and most efficient avenue, but this is historically what this team has done. So I'm not buying into it.
Minicamp Mirage on that last one for sure. All right. Simple minicamp Mirage, training camp tea leave on the last three here. And again, this is betting on youth. Jahmyr Gibbs, more than just a running back, Kate. The Athletic's Colton Pouncey writes that the Lions have made it a, quote, point of emphasis to move Jahmyr Gibbs, quote, all over the place in practice. Plus, Lions GM Brad Holmes was on Peter Schrager's podcast, and he said Jahmyr Gibbs is a multi-purpose elite weapon. Training camp tea leave, minicamp Mirage.
Tea leaves, baby.
I love it. I love
it. You just got to see... Just watch the way they banged that table when they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and you're gonna know it's all tea leaves from here, baby.
This is the 10 yards and under offense in Detroit this year, and I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a big part of that. Next one, Tank Bigsby will make things a committee with Travis Etienne. Demetrius Harvey of the Florida Times Union writes that Tank Bigsby will, quote, have plenty of opportunity to quickly become the team's primary back to Travis Etienne. And there's been a lot of talk about these guys potentially splitting carries. Minicamp Mirage, training camp tea leave.
I'm still saying minicamp Mirage, but it's continuing to trend closer to tea leaves the more we get closer to the season. So I'm at a 50-50 split. What are your thoughts, Matt?
I'm with you that I'm open to being kind of proven wrong. Right now, I think ETN I have aggressively ranked and I'm really willing to draft, although I believe that Urban Meyer catfished all of us about his pass catching ability when he did the whole Kadarius Toney. I wanted to take Kadarius Toney, but I took Travis Etienne instead. Yeah, Urban Meyer, thanks a lot. But I think that ETN's a good, explosive, early down back on a good offense. I'm really into that, but if we do get more training camp tea leaves about this guy being more involved, Tank Bigsby, who I'm going to take one way or another on Tank Bigsby. I'm just going to follow the reports on this one. So I'm with you that I'm kind of 50-50 on this as well. Last one here, another rookie running back. Titans rookie running back, Tajay Spears, is the clear backup and will have a real role in the offense that gives him more standalone value. Titans offensive coordinator Tim Kelly said they're going to give running back Tajay Spears, quote, as much as he can handle. Now, is that as much as he can handle, like being a part of the offense, or as much as he can handle, if for whatever, reason, knock on wood, God willing, this never happens, Derrick Henry misses time?
This is Derrick Henry's show. You're not no. This is minicamp Mirage for me. Just even like looking at the health of Tyjae Spears, that is the reason he fell in the draft. I think he literally came out and said he doesn't have an ACL. Like, how much can you reasonably give him? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But that sounds bad. No ACL sounds just not ideal for 20 plus carries a game, or anything of the sort, even if Derrick Henry were to go down with injury or whatever. But this is Derrick Henry's team, and I don't think until he is forced out of the game, like I don't think that's going to be anything differently.
I'm very skeptical that like Tyjae Spears, he could be really great, and I still don't know that they're going to lessen Derrick Henry's workload, because he is just the identity of this team, and the play action opens so much. The threat of Derrick Henry does open so much for this offense. I'm very skeptical that anything changes there as well. I'm not skeptical of Kate Magdziuk at all. I'm very excited about Kate doing great work for Yahoo this year. It's going to be great. You got to do a lot of like rosy, flowery stuff here, like, oh, these players are going to break out. It's going to be so exciting. But I can't wait to read your bust columns when, you slam on some players and be a little more negative during the season, Kate. So thank you for your time today. Really appreciate you joining the show on what's the second to last episode of this show. Thankfully, the second to last episode of this show being the fantasy forecast.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be helping you close this out. Hopefully on a high note here, Matt. I'm grateful to be here, and really excited to see what we come up with in the 2023 season. It's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one. This will not be the last time that Kate is on the podcast. We're going to get her back on some point during the regular season. No doubt about that. For now, we're going to throw this thing to Ravens tight end Mark Andrews, who's got a lot of great things to say about the new offense this year and his own personal journey. Let's check it out. All right, now joining the show is one of the best tight ends in the game. It's Baltimore Ravens tight end Mark Andrews. Mark, thank you so much for stopping by right here before things get ramped up this summer.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited, getting ready for the season, and it's going to be a fun one.
It definitely is. Most people know you, obviously, like I said, as an elite, and I'll say elite, capital E, elite tight end in the NFL. But a lot of people may not know that you're one of a handful of pro athletes with type 1 diabetes. You've done a lot of work in the community to motivate others with this condition, especially younger kids. A lot of that through your partnership with Dexcom. Tell us a little bit about your journey and your work with Dexcom specifically.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 9. I had a lot of the classic symptoms, but one thing that's always been true to me is I've been huge into sports. I've been blessed with an incredible family, the support staff since the first day I got diagnosed till now. And the one thing I can say is the way that technology has grown, and my way of kind of getting into with companies like Dexcom that have been truly life saving for me in my everyday life. They helped me out. I remember training for the combine, and my brother was coming into town. We had a hard workout, and I took a nap. I went to bed, and he came in, somewhat early, and my numbers went low. And the beautiful thing about Dexcom is that it's Bluetooth. So my brother saw my numbers. My mom sees my numbers. My agent can see my numbers, and so they were able to see that my numbers were trending low. I was super low, steadily low at a weird time. And my brother eventually called my agents. They came over, and I was kind of unresponsive in my my bed. And so
wow.
It's just little things like that have helped save my life on multiple occasions. But being a type 1 diabetic, you're going to have things like that happen. So I always try to stay at the best shape of my life, and Dexcom helps me do that just by knowing my trends, giving me alerts, whether my numbers are going up, down, doesn't matter. Dexcom's always been there for me and helped me in every single way.
I mean, that is a pretty incredible story, a pretty incredible testament to it. I mean, for the Bluetooth sharing and like for people to be like, oh, hey, we better go check on Mark. That's pretty incredible, man. That's awesome to hear.
It really is. It really is. And like I said, they just keep getting better and better. And yeah, I've been so fortunate to be able to work with a company like Dexcom and use them in my everyday life. It truly is life saving for people like me, and everybody else. And being an athlete, it especially matters. Just knowing my numbers, knowing my trends. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to a ton of athletes and kind of how much detail you guys have to put into the nutrition, the training, and this is just another thing for you to have to monitor. And clearly, you're doing a great job. Dexcom is doing a great job helping you out there. That's awesome, man. It's got to be motivating for people out with that condition to see what you are doing on the field in the NFL. And let's talk a little football here for a second, man. And I know everybody is really excited this year to watch the Baltimore Ravens offense. Look, I think Greg Roman did some great things with you guys, designing a great system around Lamar Jackson, but, things have gone a different direction now. And I know I've always been a huge fan of Todd Monken as a play caller, offensive coordinator. So far this offseason, how do you think things have been a little different with Todd Monken, either from a personality or a scheme perspective?
Yeah, well, first, I've got a lot of love for Giro and everything that he's done for me and the Ravens and everything like that. So I know he's going to go on and do great things. And but I'm excited for this next chapter. I'm excited for Coach Monken and this new offense. It's been fun learning it. It's been fun installing it and seeing Lamar, do his thing within it and all the different pieces that we have. I think it's going to be a dangerous offense. We're going to be able to get it. A lot of guys touches, be very versatile, be very diverse in what we're doing, and make defenses guess. So I think it's going to be a good thing for us, and it's going to be a new looking offense for the Ravens.
Is there any way that you think you specifically will fit in differently with this offense than you did Greg Roman's offense?
I think anytime, really any season, anytime you're put into a new offense, you got to kind of, carve out your own niche of the offense. And that's what I'm doing right now. It's just learning, trying to get the best I can at this playbook. And I'm so excited for the season start, training camp to start, and really dive into this because, like I said, it's going to be a great team. We have an amazing team. We've got amazing defense. We've got good coaches. So good things are going to happen in Baltimore this year.
You guys are honestly set up really well. I agree with you. I love the defense. I think, look, John Harbaugh is one of the best coaches, if not like top 2, top 3 coaches in the NFL. He's sustained a ton of success there over multiple identities too. I don't think John gets enough credit. Like the era, he's been coaching so long. I was like in college, and I'm old, Mark. So I was in college when he was there with like the Super Bowl Ravens at the time, right? So it's been a long time, and he's sustained over multiple eras. Yes. I think that's a testament to him. I think the thing with the AFC though, man, it's just so crowded. When you look across even your division too, where do you feel like you guys kind of slot in? The Bengals are great. The Steelers, I think, have a lot of good things going for them. You could see it with the Browns this year. What's kind of the goal and motivation this year with this Ravens squad in general?
Well, at the end of the day, it's always to be the best team that we can be. We're not worried about anything else, but we have an incredible division. The AFC in general is incredible, but the AFC North is a tough division, and it's always like that. No matter if, a team's having a good year or a bad year, if you're having a good year and you're playing a team that's having a bad year, it's still going to be a good game. It's a dogfight each and every game that you play in within our division. So obviously, the Bengals are kind of the reigning champs in our division. They had us in the playoffs. That's going to be a fun one. The Steelers, obviously, that's one of the best rivalries in football, and you can't overlook that. And the Cleveland Browns. So we have a tough division, and I'm excited about each and every one of those games.
Yeah, they're going to be fun to watch from us on the outside. So, Mark, I'm a receiver guy. One of the biggest things that I do is a site called Reception Perception, where I chart routes for receivers over an 8-game sample. I mean, I'm charting where they line up, how often they beat man zone press coverage, each route that they run. I got to tell you, man, I look at this wide receiver core. Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, just typically just the guys with WR next to their name, right? That's an exciting trio to me. Give me a quick scouting report on your expectations for these 3 players and how they might fit in here.
Huge. And you named 3 of them, but we really have, you look at some of the other guys we got too, the Nelson Aguilars and Devin Duvernay, James Prochet. I think a lot of those guys, I think they complement each other so well, but I think all those guys are guys that, you look at Zay Flowers, OBJ, those guys can take the top off. Rashad Bateman take the top off, expand the defense. I think that's something that's going to be huge for us, but they're also really, really good route runners. They can win in man and make the big time catch. So, when you add pieces like that and you have all these guys playing on the field at the same time, it's it's hard to focus on one guy. It's hard to, really pin down. You're going to have to, kind of pick your poison. And as an offense, that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, Rashad especially, man. I think he showed a ton of potential those first 2 weeks and just, unfortunately dealing with injuries. I think he could be, there's always guys that I like put that flag plant on after the rookie year. Like, I'm telling you, this guy's like a stud level route runner, and then it just doesn't happen. Brandon Ayuk was another one from the 49ers. I loved Ayuk's route running his rookie year. It just didn't happen the second year, and then last year he gets 1,000 yards. I could see that from Bateman this year. But then you look at Flowers as another guy that's so dangerous too. So you guys got some good things working there. Like I mentioned, Mark, I'm a receiver guy. I mostly work on receivers. One of the most common feedback I get from people is, well, why don't you chart tight ends? Like, why aren't you working on tight ends too? My first response, Mark, is kind of like a nerdy one, which is, hey, I've only done receivers. The data, it might be a little bit different, whatever. The second one is, I got a wife, I got a house, like I'm trying to have a life too. And there's like, you just rattled off like 7 receivers from your roster. There's so many across the entire league. How much do you think, though, if you're going to push back on me here a little bit, how much do you think the lines are blurred between receivers and tight ends at this point in the NFL?
No, they're 100% blurred. It depends what kind of, tight end you are or what you're really doing. But, we're asked to run routes just as much as they are. The only difference is that we're a little bit bigger. And, we have to block a little bit more too. We've got to block the big guys. So I think you look at some of the routes, especially inside, even some of the guys outside that are running the go balls and stuff like that, the Darren Wallers. It's pretty damn impressive the way that the tight end position is moving. I think it's continuing to grow. I think guys are continuing to elevate year after year, getting better and learning from each other, and that's a beautiful thing. So you might have to start tapping into these tight ends.
Yeah, Mark. I mean, you just signed my divorce papers. My wife is going to actually leave me if I start doing more work, bro. So I know but it is true. I mean, you guys deserve so much credit for what you do, and I think that's why you sometimes see tight ends like kind of start a little slower, right? Like sometimes those guys don't have those like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type rookie years necessarily, just because I think people forget you guys are asked to run routes like receivers. As much as I'm not trying to admit that because I'm trying to manage my workdoor. But you're asked to run routes like big, sometimes outside receivers too. You do work outside, lining up as like a true X sometimes too. And then you're asked to block like a tackle. It's a lot to put on these young guys coming out of college. Do you think that's like kind of part of why the transition is a little more difficult?
100%. It's like it's almost like being a quarterback. Obviously they know a little bit more than tight ends, just with all the ball fakes and the motions. But at the end of the day, the tight ends are on the field. They're probably the second to the quarterback, and it's a tough position to learn. I think from college to the NFL, the information load is so much greater than a lot of other positions. You're learning so much. And I know for me personally, that was the case. I was able to soak in all this information and then process it. And I think the guys that are able to do that faster, are able to, take their careers off at a faster rate too.
Yeah. I think that processing of information is so huge. I talked to a lot of slot receivers that say that's why they love playing the slot, because they feel like they can process more coverages just like a quarterback there. Mm-hmm. Last question for you here, Mark. I'm not going to say that like Lamar Jackson is, under the radar player. This guy, he won the damn NFL MVP, several years ago, right? Like people know who Lamar Jackson is, but I think people were more dialed in on him this offseason. Obviously, like, let me just check out his Twitter feed, right? With the whole contract stuff. What's one thing about Lamar that most NFL fans might not know about?
That's a great question. Are you talking football or, just anything?
I mean, wherever you want to take it, man.
I think a guy like, Lamar it's someone from, the outside looking in. You can have a, perceived judgment, of who he is or what he's about. But, at the end of the day, just being around him so much and he's just one of the most, coolest down to earth people that you'll ever meet. He's extremely smart. He, when he talks, he thinks before he speaks and he says very meaningful things and that's very thought out. So I think that, it's easy to perceive him in a certain way, but one of the best dudes, one of the best leaders that have been around, and he's just a special person.
That's awesome. Love to hear that. Well, hey, Mark, really appreciate you sharing about your journey, about Dexcom, and a ton of stuff here about the Ravens. Where can people find out more about Dexcom if they're kind of in the same boat as you are?
You can go look up Dexcom online. You'll probably find everything you need to know. And again, it's something that's helped change my life. If you're a type 1 out there, someone that's type 1, it's incredibly life changing. Just knowing your trends, getting alerts, and letting everybody else in on the information is something that's huge. So I just want all the people to take care of themselves, and God bless.
Hey, Mark, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Good luck this year, man. I think it's going to be a fun season.
Thank you, Matt. I had a good time with you.
All right, that's going to do it for the show. Thank you to both elite Ravens tight end Mark Andrews and elite everything Kate Magdziuk for generously giving us some of their time. And shout out to Lord Podcast for coming home where he belongs. Coming back, groveling back home. No, seriously, coming back home and pinch hitting for Colin while he's out on the final 2 episodes of the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast. Next episode, Scott Pianowski is going to join me to recap our most recent mock draft on the Yahoo website. Can't wait to do that one. And of course, if you missed it in the intro, don't skip the intro. Listen to the intros. I put so much time and energy into what I'm going to say in the intro. We are going to be going under a lot of transition next week when we go to 5 episodes a week, but new music, new episode titles, new name, flashy stuff coming. We can't wait. It's going to be awesome. Football season is here. There's no escaping it. Until then, we're out.